So first, the concept of the PARB database. I think part of it is we had to do it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we had to get to modern technology. If you are fairly new to PARB, you don't know this, but there was just this yellow blank form. So every time you would do a review, you would fill out the top of the form with the KK number, the JD number, the kid's name, all of that every time, no matter how many times you reviewed that case, you'd have to fill that out. And then you would handwrite your recommendation and then turn it in. So that doesn't really work for quality assurance because me or any other staff couldn't look at your recommendation unless we happen to be at your meeting and happen to see what you wrote. One thing we're trying to do too is cross-reference data to each other, county to county and things like that, but also to child welfare data. And we certainly can't do that if we don't have the data electronic system. Not to mention, I've kind of noticed too over the last few years since we've been doing this, the recommendations I think have gotten clearer, longer, better written, and of course legible. Because if you're, typing, people can read that. Sometimes recommendations, in spite of people's best attempts, are not always legible. And updates should be easier. If you're re-reviewing a case, which a lot of you all, especially in the rural areas, you might review the same case fairly often. When you do an additional review, it should be easier. You're not putting in all that information to begin with. And I do want to acknowledge that this is not easy. This has been really challenged for a lot of the boards for lots of reasons. One is the Wi-Fi issue. So in order to log on to the database to enter your case information while you're doing the case review, which is what we really want you to do, is do it while you're doing the review in the courthouse. A lot of these courthouses do not have good Wi-Fi, or you have to have permission to, maybe the court clerk, you have to share their Wi-Fi, so you have to get their password, that sort of thing. So there's been lots of challenges on doing that. If you're bored, or hopefully if you're new, hopefully you've addressed the most challenges by now. If you're still having some of those same challenges, let me know. Let's talk through it. Let's come up with some strategies. Printing is another issue. You still have to print the recommendation and submit it. It can't just be all electronic. They have to make copies. The court clerk has to file it and put it in the case file. So it does have to be printed. And that can be a challenge too. And a lot of members maybe don't really use email a lot or don't use computers a lot. And I know that can be a challenge. All of those things, like I said, I think we can work through, but those have come up. None of those are insurmountable, I don't think. One thing I think you should think about too is someone on your board or someone that you can recruit, like for Love County, we specifically recruited, and in Craig County, we specifically recruited someone who felt very comfortable using the online system, and their job is to help do the database for that meeting. So, you may not be very comfortable with it, but you might be able to find someone who is, that can join your board, or maybe with just a little bit of training can help do this. I love it when everybody in the board can log on for themselves and enter their own case information, but I know that's not necessarily realistic. Sometimes it's a challenge just to get one or two people on the board that's really comfortable using it. And then, this, unfortunately, since we've spent money on this system and we're using this system, it's now the standard. And I mentioned earlier, if you logged in early, how we're doing this kind of credentialing process now. I announced over a year ago that the database is required, but at this point, once I go out and do a credentialing visit for your board and you're not using the database, I will not be able to recommend that your board be credentialed by the Commission on Children and Youth. So basically, by the time I get out there and do a credentialing visit, if you're not doing the database, you will not be a sanctioned body by the Commission on Children and Youth. If you're still working on it, that's different. We can work through it. But if I've been working with you for years to get you to help get to the database and you're still not there, you need to please get there quick. Any questions so far on that? Okay. So getting your members into the database, and I think some people were asking about that already. If you look right here on that number 4, I can send you an email that's got the link on it and your username and your password. Um, when you apply to be a PARB member and you get your official email from me or from Shelby saying that you've been appointed, at some point near or around there, we will enter your information from your application into the data system. So we have your membership information. That might be right when we send the letter, or that might be 2 days later. I've done it a couple of times 2 days earlier. When we do that, it automatically generates an email that comes from the University of Oklahoma that tells you your username and password. That gets lost a lot, and I understand that. If you don't use email a lot, or maybe it goes to junk or something like that. Mary's dog saying hello. I'm going to mute you there. Okay. I understand that email gets lost. No big deal. If you get an official, that you're a new member, give me a day or two to get your information entered into the system. But if it's been more than that and you still haven't seen an email, or you think you saw an email and you're not sure, just reach out to me. I can reset your password. I can send you a link. And remember too, the email that I will put in the system is the one that's in your application. So if there's a different email that you use, be sure and when you log in, it's the one from your application. And I don't know your password, but I can reset it and send you a new one. And then once that point, if you don't want me to know your password, which is fine, you can always go in the system and change it yourself. So that's getting into the system. Let me go back a little bit. And they just have to get to the internet. You know, it's not a software program. It's just like if you went online to fill in a credit card application, or log into your bank account software is not on your computer. You're logging into the internet to someone else's system. That's what you're doing when you're accessing the PARB database. And you can do that from a desktop, laptop, or even a phone in a pinch. I would encourage you not to do your recommendations on an iPhone, but you could. So tools, I already kind of shared those. We have a really excellently written training manual with lots of pictures. So we've got that. I know it's thick. You're not going to maybe want to read it cover for cover, but if you're struggling a little bit, it's pretty easy to use. I made a training video. I've heard some feedback that, that's kind of a little bit slow and really designed for people that just aren't really comfortable using a computer. Great. If that's you, watch the video. If it's not you, you probably don't need to watch the video. Again, your resource people are, Milena, if you're out of Tulsa, Shelby out of Oklahoma County, or Lisa or Chera, and Lisa and I statewide. I know Lisa's real good and Chera is really good too. And I try to be good. If you're having a login issue or something, or if you're at a meeting and you're having trouble, reach out immediately, give us a call. We'll try to fix it right there. I mean, obviously we have meetings. A lot of times I'm driving. I can't always respond immediately, but give it a shot. And I will email all of this out to everybody that attended. Again, if you joined late, type in your name so I know you attended, and I will email you. If I don't have your email, like if you're not an official member yet, put your email in the notes too. If you are an official PARB member, which most of you should be, I should have your email already. So what fields to complete? Well, my first question is, what do you want to know? Really? I mean, do you want to know when the next court date is so that you can kind of figure that out? Do you, there's a million different things from the database. In order to move, and I'll go ahead and log in here. Let me log in and share the screen real quick. Let me look at notes, make sure everybody's good. Okay, Lisa put her contacts in there. Melissa gave us a shout out. That's nice. Let me pull up the database real quick and then I'll share my screen. Oh, wait. Any questions real quick while I'm pulling this up?
When you say, what do you want to know while you're pulling it up, is it what we want to know? I mean, because I'm new and I haven't even sat at the board. My first meeting will be in February.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's kind of both. There are required fields I want to go over. You need to have the kid's name, you need to have the case name, JD number, stuff like that. But then there's other things that, here, let me share my screen. Hold on. That are not required fields, but some people have asked that they be added because their board has traditionally asked those types of questions. So just to remind you, oh shoot, I should have gone back to the login. So you should, when you hit that hyperlink, you'll get a login like this. It's your username. It should be your email address. I assume everybody's seeing the screen. And then password, and then click login. Give it a minute. And then click on here we go. Click on programs and then PARB. Just while I've got everybody's attention, see under cases, volunteer hours is the next tab. So when you want to enter your volunteer hours for the month, you can click on that and do it. But if you're entering a new case, of course, you click on cases and you click on new case. So see the red star next to the district? I know it's real small, but trust me, it's there where I'm circling. Anything that's got a red kind of star like that, you have to fill that out or you're not going to make it to the next screen. So those are required fields. So once you do corporate office here, select county, do test board if I can find it. There we go.
While you're doing that, I got on mine new and the only tab it had was cases. There was nothing under that. So are we supposed to put in the hours that we volunteer somewhere?
Yeah, at least I think you just updated that yesterday or the day before in the process of that. It used to be just the chairs could do that, but we
Okay.
don't always know. But really, only one person for your board really should be doing that, either the chair or the secretary. So you would, at the beginning of your meeting, they go around and say, okay, how many volunteer hours does everybody have for this month? And then everybody said, oh, I worked about 3 hours. I worked about 2 hours. Okay, well, we add today's meeting. So that's a total of 25 hours for this month. And then someone goes in and clicks on the volunteer hours. And then they, add the hours. Click on
Okay,
that.
so I don't have to mess with it, is what you're saying.
No, you shouldn't. Remind me which county you're in.
Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah. Shelby will enter that for you.
Okay.
Okay. So cases. Oh, wait. I need 1 second to go look at my membership. And I tested this yesterday where I need to only give myself permission to look at certain cases. So I'm not sharing everything. Give me 1 second. Okay, everybody see the screen again? So programs, PARB, cases. So a new case. So you select your board and your county. And the JD number is required field. So KK number, if you're not familiar, that's the child welfare identification number. We do not have that as a required field, but I always tell people that I really want them to fill that out. The reason we don't have it as a required field is because sometimes it's hard to find that number. You have to have the documents. I don't want anyone to not be able to enter the recommendation because they can't find the KK number. Same time though, there, the JD number, I think most of you know, that's assigned by county, and the first number is the year. So if a case is the first case of the year in 2024, the JD number would be 2024-1. Well, there's going to be 77 counties in Oklahoma. There'll be 77 20241 cases, right? So we need that child welfare identification number to separate out cases. Plus, that's the way that we'll link up with child welfare data. So I really do want you to put the KK number. You can always go back and add it later if you need to do that. That's why we didn't want to slow you down. And then review of course, that's the case name. So let's say the Smith children. And then you click next. It takes you to the next screen. You need to know the judge. That's got a red thing by it. But like assistant district attorney, that's nice to know, especially if you're going to be giving your recommendation to the district attorney's office. A lot of times they have the trays that you put those in. That's certainly not a required field. But if it's nice to have. And then remember, once you enter a case for the first time, if you re-review that case, that information is going to always stay in there. Next court date. Again, that's kind of I was talking about earlier, what do you want to know? Well, I think it's kind of nice, especially if you're preparing your caseload, your case list, you pretty much know when they're going to court next, because you should start with your deprived case list of who's going to be going to court in the next 30 days or between your meetings. So you should have that information in front of you. So if you put in the next court date, say February 19th, then when you're sorting cases later, you can kind of sort by that next court date, and then to kind of prepare things. But it's not going to make any difference on the recommendation. It's more of an organizational tool. I don't care. That's another classic example of what, you talked about, the data for me versus the data for you. I don't care when the next court date is. I mean, I generally want to know that you're getting these cases submitted in a timely manner, but the next court date is really for you to help you know when to prepare. The next review date, again, that's the first review date, that's required. So that's going to be, and remember, this automatically puts in today's date. So if you go back later, like, you took notes at today's meeting, but you're not going to finish your recommendation until tomorrow, then you want to go back and backdate to that date of the meeting. All you have to do is pick up the calendar and just go back a day. So actually the meeting was yesterday. The next review date, that's when you think this case should be reviewed again. So a lot of you have done that in the past on your sheets, on your agenda sheets, and you've asked, oh, when do you guys want to see this case again? Well, I'm really concerned about mom and she's going to finish her treatment on time. So, okay, I want to see it next month. So you'll put the next review date as when, 02/28. So you're going to put the next review date as your next meeting date. But say, well, I really don't feel like we need to look at this case anytime soon. They're about to, they're really stable. So you might say, okay, well, let's put it off for 6 months. Because remember, by statute, we review every case once every 6 months. So 6 months is kind of like should be the extension of that. So you put that date in. Or if maybe for, the urban counties like Tulsa and Oklahoma, a lot of times you guys don't necessarily look at the same case twice. Sometimes you do, but that's kind of fairly subjective on when you want to look at the case again. And then you can, use that as a way to sort. And of course, you put your name in as who's the reviewer. So here's a classic example. I get this all the time. So in Oklahoma County, and I think in Tulsa County too, they really like to put the current worker, the assigned permanency worker, with their phone number. Why is that? Well, because they call them, right? They want to call, they want to check, they want to maybe schedule them to attend the next meeting. So it's nice to have the worker's name and the phone number. If you're not contacting the worker between meetings, you certainly don't need to put their phone number in there. You might put the name just because it's, when you print the sheet or you look at past recommendations, it's nice to be able to quickly identify who the worker is, right? Same with this, with the supervisor. A lot of times workers change, so it's sometimes nice to have the name of the supervisor. That's not a required field. Contact data is certainly not a required field, but again, if you're doing this for yourself on, when did I reach out to them or when did I contact them? That's why that field is there. I've got a place to put your foster parent information, though at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, that's not on the printed form anymore. So that's
Yeah, we put that off for the witness problem.
for confidentiality reasons. So I wouldn't even bother to do that at all. We might even just take that off the form altogether. If you want to reach out to the foster parent, great. But we certainly don't need that for the database. Mom's attorney, dad's attorney, other attorneys. Again, that's for kind of serving. If it's the same attorney that gets every case, you may not bother to put it in there. But if you're in an area where there's multiple attorneys and you want to make sure you get a copy of your recommendation to the right attorney, then you would certainly fill that out. If there's a CASA worker that you want to be sure that they attend the meeting or they get the information, you'd put them in. But it's certainly not something, I'm not going to be calling you asking you why you didn't put the CASA in there. Tribal information, that's certainly really important if you want to make sure and loop in the tribal worker if it's an ICWA case. If it's not, then you leave that blank. The kids' information. So there's some required fields in here. So the name is a required field. So you have to put the kid's name in. You have to put the date of birth. Let's go with March 20, March 18. Child's attorney, that's not a required field, but again, if you want to make sure that the kid's attorney, if it's a separate attorney, gets the recommendation, then you probably want to put that in there, or if you'll be contacting them. Gender's not a required field, though we do reports on gender, so it's really nice to have that. I would put that in there as we really want to have it, but we're not going to make you do it. I've had cases with, I'm sure you have too, with very unique names that you're having a hard time figuring out if it's a boy or a girl. We don't want you to not be able to finish your recommendation because you can't figure out if it's a boy or a girl. Same with placement type. Again, traditional foster care, it certainly helps. Remember, when you print these, again, it's a tool for you. So if you're looking at the printed recommendation or you're looking at an old recommendation on a kid that you're now reviewing, knowing that 6 months ago or 3 months ago they were in traditional foster care is helpful information to have. Data removal, that's probably underneath, besides the KK number, my number 2, please put that in there thing. Because if a kid was removed 2 weeks ago, it's a lot different than if they were removed 5 years ago, right? Just like their age. If you're dealing with a 2-year-old or you're dealing with a 16-year-old, tells you all kinds of things about that case. Their safety and everything else. Same with the date of removal. This does not have to be an exact science. You can usually find it in the ISP or somewhere in any of the child welfare documentation. Or a lot of times I'll figure out when the show cause hearing or one of the initial hearings was, and I'll put that date in. I'm not necessarily I mean, it'd be nice to have accurate data removal, but a lot of times I'm kind of doing an educated guess based on what the case file says. Or a lot of times on the child welfare data, it'll say, months out of home, it'll say 18 months. Well, I look at the date that report was written. That report was written 3 months ago, and and in that report, it says they've been out of the home for 9 months, then I know they've been out a total of 12 months, right? I add those two, how long ago the report was and what it said. And I'll use that as my data removal. So we'll give this kid a data removal of January 4th. And then that'll show you on the report, and that tracks over time. So that's pretty important. And once you have it once, you don't have to figure it out again. So again, the KK number and the removal date takes a little bit of digging, but once you do it, you don't have to do it again. It's not going to change. This is brand new. So this is just this next part. We're trying to figure out, state PARB especially is concerned about jury trials slowing down termination procedures, especially in the rural areas. So they asked that we start tracking. There's a law passed a couple of years ago that basically said families can still ask for a jury trial, but it has to be done within 6 months. So we want to find out, are these jury trials being done within 6 months? This isn't going to come up very often, but if you happen to know, and if you don't know, don't worry about it at all. Not super critical, but we're trying to track when child welfare recommended termination, when the ADA filed for termination, stuff like that. Trial type is jury trial versus bench trial. If you're not really dealing with that, or this is confusing, please go ahead and skip that. And then you're into your actual recommendation part. Notice board findings is not a required field. A lot of people do board findings to kind of state fact. Mom finished her parenting classes. Johnny's doing great in school, stuff like that. The recommendation should be PARB recommends that, whatever, that Johnny get a new pair of glasses or something like that. So do not feel like you have to use findings. That's kind of a tool. I talked to about these down here, that again, not a required one, but a couple of counties were using this, and I think it's really helpful. Recommendations for permanency. Do you recommend reunification or guardianship or long-term foster care or termination? This is your recommendation. So you can certainly say, well, we really recommend a guardianship in this case. Oh, and one thing too that I tell people a lot, I know that if you are doing multiple things, your screen can end up going away. If you're just trying to get a case entered and saved real quick, go to your board recommendations, just put in a period. Now that required field is done, and now you can save that case and you can go back and edit it later. But you're not, you're not stuck, and you don't have to write your recommendation. The categories, let me talk about those real quick. That we really want more of you to do that at this point. In the database, and I'll send out as well, I took in the training manual for the database that I talked about earlier, there's the last like 5 pages are the recommendation categories with a description. What does it mean when you talk about mental health services? What does it mean when you talk about educational supports? Pretty common sense. Basically, these are things you write your recommendation and then you think, oh, in my recommendation, I talked about travel supports. I talked about educational supports. I talked about visitation. You just click all those that apply. Again, not a required field, but it's going to help us be more sophisticated in our writing and recommendations. You can type in chairperson. Usually I'll leave this blank as well. This page on copies, again, this is just a tool, because if you click, oh, I need to give a copy to the child's attorney, maybe they don't have, maybe the child's attorney is not different from the main attorney, so you don't need to check that. Maybe there's not a CASA. Maybe there is a CASA. So these are really just for you. So don't check these for me. It's just going to tell you what you need to make copies of and then submit. So questions on that? All right, you're out. I tested this yesterday and I should have tested it this morning. But if I had a list of cases, you can sort by review of, and it will, let's see if I can. It's only showing me test board. But if you had multiple cases listed, and again, I'm recording this, so I don't want to put actual case information up. But just trust me, if from this screen where you see the cases, your board, like if you're Pushmataha County and you log in, your permissions are only for Pushmataha County. So you're going to see Pushmataha County cases only. You know, Craig County is going to see only Craig County. So it'll list your cases. From this screen, you can click on review of, and it'll list in alphabetical order, just like a spreadsheet. So if you're having a hard time finding, you want to say, oh, this case, I can't remember if it's been reviewed or not. You can click up here and do a search by the name or the KK number or the JD number. Or what I like to do a lot is just click on review of, and it'll put all the cases in alphabetical order. And then I can kind of scroll through and find that case real quick. You can do it by last review as well. So it'll kind of sort that as well. And you can click on next review and it'll show next review. And then you can click on this export nut thing and it will download an Excel spreadsheet. Are you seeing an Excel spreadsheet? Let me make sure. So it'll list the board, the JD number, the KK number, review of, last review, reviewer, next review. So then you can sort by that. So a lot of times when I'm out in the field, I'm saying, you know, I'm asking the question as even part of the credentialing process, are you using the database to help identify which cases you want to review? This is what I'm, thanks, Melissa. This is what I'm talking about is you can export to Excel or you can sort by different things. You can say, oh, okay, well, this particular case was on the docket to come up for review again, but looks like I've sorted by when it was last reviewed, and I saw this one was last reviewed last month. So maybe we don't need to look at this case again. Maybe you want to look at the case because someone identified that said, yes, I want to look at that, you know, another time, or I want to look at that sooner. You can certainly do that. So does that make sense? Okay. Let me go back to my Word document here. And if you know me, you know I really like to play with Excel spreadsheets. I can show you all kinds of tricks on Excel that I think make life easier. Once you put something in a database, you can manipulate it a lot. And so that should, you know, help you figure out things too. So again, that's one reason once they're in the database, we can pretty much sort by that. And I can do, me and Shelby and Milena and Lisa and I can do bigger, more extensive reports than you can. We have permissions to do that. So if you're curious if you can know how many cases one of your volunteers reviewed in the, you know, in 2024, we can tell you that information. So just ask and we'll help you do that. Okay. So using the database to manage your review cases. So like I said, you can sort by name, sort by last review, sort by next review, download it into Excel. And then we can use the PARB, well, staff can use that PARB reports tab to show you stuff. On getting the case printed, I mentioned that earlier, you do have to, that's a common challenge that people have. Some folks have a mobile printer that they can kind of, I have one personally. When I go to a meeting, I can pull it out. Shelby has one too. We can plug it in, we can put it in our computer, and we can print right there. That sure is convenient. I wish the state of Oklahoma could buy you all a printer. I wish we could buy you all laptops. We can't. And the reason is not necessarily budget. It's because it becomes part of the state's asset, which puts it in all kinds of tracking hell, basically, where we have to track serial numbers. We have to do all this, and it's just impossible. So I'm sorry we can't do that. I'm not telling you to buy a laptop or a printer. I'm hoping that you might have one. I've seen people too, if there's a printer on site, especially, you can do that. You might be able to, I've seen people save their cases on a flash drive and hand that flash drive to a bailiff or a court clerk and print from there. Thumb drive is another word for it. You can, once people have finished writing the recommendations, and again, chair shouldn't have to do everything. The chair should be the coordinator, not the doer of all tasks. So if there's someone on your board that can maybe run home and log onto their desktop and grab some yellow paper and print those recommendations from home, great. You can save these in a PDF, and they can be emailed. Please only do that if you work for the state of Oklahoma or the federal government or have some sort of super secure email, because we are sharing confidential information. If you've got a Yahoo or Google email you're using, please don't email recommendations. Or there's SharePoint or shared filing systems. That's another way of securely sharing information.